LOB. This group of players was nostalgic. Today, we'll talk about the history of the Seattle Seahawks' famous secondary, the Legion of Boom. There are plenty of ways to be a successful team in the NFL. You could have an elite quarterback like Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. You could have a masterminded head coach like Vince Lombardi, Bill Walsh, or Don Shula. Above all, arguably, nothing is more important than one specific thing. As legendary football coach Bear Bryant once said, defense wins championships. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens, the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the 2015 Denver Broncos are some recent examples of how a dominant defense can lead you to immediate success. But over the last decade plus, arguably no defensive unit has been more polarizing than the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks. The early 2010 Seahawks very well might be the greatest secondary ever assembled, with All-Pro cornerback Richard Sherman and All-Pro safeties Kam Chancellor and Earl Thomas absolutely locking down anything over the top. The Legion of Boom terrified every quarterback that was facing the Seahawks that week, especially guys like Colin Kaepernick of the 49ers and Carson Palmer of the Cardinals, as they would have to play Seattle twice a year. Sherman, Chancellor, and Thomas helped lead Seattle to a dominant 43-8 victory in Super Bowl 48 against the red-hot Denver Broncos, the team that had the #1 offense in the NFL and MVP quarterback Peyton Manning, who had one of the single greatest MVP seasons in NFL history before this loss. That's how dominant this defense was. But how good was the Legion of Boom really? Is this tandem truly one of the greatest ever, or are fans blinded by nostalgia? That's what we're here to discuss. In 2010, the Seattle Seahawks were coming off of a forgettable season, finishing the season with a 5-11 record. The Seahawks were in the bottom 10 in almost every single defensive category, so it was clear that a change had to be made. So what did they do? They fired Jim Mora and hired Pete Carroll as VP of Football Operations and head coach. Then, a week later, they hired John Schneider as GM. The new duo committed to building their team through the draft by drafting and developing players. In the first round of the 2010 NFL Draft, with the 14th pick, they selected Earl Thomas, a safety out of the University of Texas. However, Thomas wouldn't be the only safety Seattle would take in the 2010 draft, as they also landed Kam Chancellor from Virginia Tech in the 5th round, with pick 133 to be exact. As rookies, the two would have completely different roles for the Seahawks. Thomas was a Week 1 starter who made an immediate impact. Meanwhile, Chancellor took a bit to learn and develop, only recording 23 total tackles in his rookie season. The Seahawks finished the 2010 season 7-9, a slight improvement, but there was still much work to be done. Seattle had found their safeties, but it was clear that the cornerback room was still lacking. You would think that Schneider and Carroll would look to the early rounds, but they wouldn't address the secondary until round 5. With the 154th pick, they selected former 6'2 receiver turned corner Richard Sherman out of Stanford. Sherman had all of the physical attributes to be great. His size and strength caught the eye of the regime, so Seattle took a chance. 1 round later, they chose another cornerback, Byron Maxwell. They made another significant transaction in the secondary, signing 6'4 cornerback Brandon Browner from Canada after his outstanding play for the Calgary Stampeders of the CFL. Seattle started the season off poorly, recording a miserable 2-6 record through their first 8 games. By this point, Thomas and Chancellor had cemented themselves as one of the league's best safety duos, and 5th-round pick Richard Sherman earned the starting job at corner as a rookie. After their 2-6 start, Seattle would get hot, winning 5 of their last 8 games for yet another 7-9 season. The difference between this one and the last is that Seattle now had a top 7 defense. Not only that, but Earl Thomas and Kam Chancellor would both make their first Pro Bowl teams, with Thomas even making second-team All-Pro. Sherman would finish his rookie season strong as well, recording 4 interceptions in his 10 starts, showing that Seattle had found something special in the secondary brewing. Going into the 2012 season, the Seahawks had a ton of hype as a team that could make a big splash in the playoffs. Fans even came up with a name for their up-and-coming secondary. Can you guess what that would be? However, there was one gleaming issue. They didn't have a quarterback. Weeks before the season would begin, Seattle traded their starting quarterback, Tavares Jackson, to the Buffalo Bills, leaving a big hole under center. However, that summer, they had signed Matt Flynn from Green Bay, and they drafted a quarterback from Wisconsin named Russell Wilson in the third round, who would ultimately win the starting role. Having an unproven rookie quarterback at the helm made the Seahawks hype balance out, but boy, would it pick back up once they saw some regular season action. Going into their Week 11 bye week, the Seahawks would get themselves to a 6-4 record, along with one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Legion of Boom were rising out of the shadows and becoming a scary threat to every NFL offense they faced. But after falling to 6-5 after a 24-21 loss to the Miami Dolphins, Seattle would win 5 straight games to end the season, holding their opponents to 9.9 points per game during that stretch, including a Week 14 shutout victory versus the Arizona Cardinals. The Seahawks would end the season with an 11-5 record, finishing second in the NFC West, but securing a playoff spot. The Legion of Boom would be in full effect, finishing the season with the best scoring defense in the NFL, a sign of things to come. Not only that, but both Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman would make first-team All-Pro, cementing themselves as the best players at their positions in the league. In their first playoff game as a tandem, the Seahawks defeated the Washington Redskins 24-14. However, they would lose in the divisional round to the Atlanta Falcons in a 30-28 instant classic. Despite the loss, it was clear that Seattle would be a Super Bowl favorite for years to come. Expectations were soaring at an all-time high in Seattle heading into the 2013 season. So what did they do? They became the best team in all of football. They finished the season with a 13-3 record and by far the best defense in the league, as the Legion of Boom would allow an absurd 14.4 points per game over the entire 16-game season. Not only that, but all 3 of their core secondary pieces would make an All-Pro team, as Sherman and Thomas once again would both make first-team All-Pro, and Chancellor made second-team All-Pro. Sherman and Thomas would also both finish top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Even Russell Wilson would make a Pro Bowl and finish top 5 in Offensive Player of the Year voting. All signs were pointing toward the Lombardi coming to Seattle. They just had to replicate their regular season in January. In the divisional round, they would beat the New Orleans Saints in convincing fashion before hosting their division rivals and reigning NFC champions, the Jim Harbaugh-led San Francisco 49ers, in the NFC Championship. San Francisco was one of the 3 teams to beat Seattle in the regular season, so this game could have gone either way. After a back-and-forth contest, the game came down to the Seahawks leading 23-17 late in the game. But Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers were driving down the field, looking for one last touchdown to send them to their second straight Super Bowl. San Francisco would have the ball at the Seattle 18 line with 30 seconds left. Hoping to find the end zone, Kaepernick would throw a pass to star receiver Michael Crabtree in the back corner of the end zone. As Crabtree was tracking the ball, Richard Sherman was there to bat the ball into the air before it being intercepted by linebacker Malcolm Smith. In arguably the Legion of Boom's most iconic and memorable moment, Sherman had sent his team to the Super Bowl.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're going to get.
But the next opponent they faced was the toughest of them all. Seattle would run into the NFL's #1 offense, the Denver Broncos, who were 13-3 and led by the league's MVP, Peyton Manning. This Broncos offense put the entire NFL through an offensive clinic that year. In a 16-game regular season, Peyton Manning threw for a staggering record-breaking 5,477 yards and 55 touchdowns. Noshawn Moreno led the Broncos in all-purpose yards, rushing for 1,038 and 10 touchdowns while catching 60 passes for 548 yards. Demaryius Thomas led the team with 92 catches and gained 1,430 yards along with 14 touchdowns. Eric Decker caught 87 passes for 1,288 yards and 11 touchdowns. Wes Welker and Julius Thomas each had over 700 yards and at least 10 touchdowns apiece. This offense was insane. Peyton was cooking all year long, picking apart every defense that took the field against them. But what did Seattle do? They made Denver look like a college team. Seattle would win Super Bowl 48 43-8 after an absolutely dominating performance from the Legion of Boom. So, who won the Super Bowl MVP? Richard Sherman? Earl Thomas? Nope, it was the man who caught the game-sealing interception 2 weeks prior, Malcolm Smith. The best defense in the league took on the moniker and brought the 12s in Seattle a Lombardi trophy, as they would look to start a dynasty. Unfortunately, that dynasty would never come. The following season, all three secondary guys would make all-pro teams again, Seattle would win the NFC West again, and they would see themselves in the Super Bowl again. So why didn't their dynasty happen? Malcolm Butler is why. The Seahawks were down 4 points to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots with 26 seconds to go, and they were at the New England 1-yard line. Surely, they would just run the ball in with powerhouse running back Marshawn Lynch, right? Nope. Instead, Russell Wilson would throw a slant to wide-out Ricardo Lockett that would get cut off by Butler, who intercepted the pass and shattered the dreams of Seahawks fans everywhere. The following 2 seasons would see the Legion of Boom remain successful, but Seattle would lose in the divisional round twice to the eventual NFC champions, the Carolina Panthers in 2015 and the Atlanta Falcons in 2016. After that, things pummeled downhill for LOB. Kam Chancellor would shockingly retire after the 2017 season. Richard Sherman would sign with the rival 49ers in the same offseason, and just 1 season later, Earl Thomas would leave to play for the Baltimore Ravens. The Legion had fallen. However, they had done more than enough to solidify them as one of the best, if not the best, secondary in NFL history, and they have a dominant ring to show for it. So, how good was the Legion of Boom actually? Very, very good. Are they the greatest secondary of all time? Let us know in the comments. You made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching the Halftime Show.
Who was talking about you?
Crabtree, don't you open your mouth about the best. Or I'm going to set it for you real quick. LOB.